Hello my friends, welcome back to another tutorial. I hope you're all enjoying the wonderful little paintings that we're doing on this channel. I hope you enjoyed the last painting as well, the sunset seascape. I really enjoyed that. Lovely colours. Nice to do something just with lots of different colours. And I put a little boat in there as well, just for a little bit of distance. But look, it was very fun nonetheless. It was great learning, all right? Great learning about mixing. So check out that tutorial if you're interested in creating a nice sunset with warm colours, okay? This week, I am going to paint a request by a customer. Um, I told the customer I could do a tutorial of this painting for him. I think it's a present for his wife. So I'm going to call him AJ. It's very difficult to pronounce his full name, so I'm just going to say, AJ, this is for you, okay? I hope you enjoy this. AJ wants me to paint a lovely little forest scene. It's a beautiful little scene, very eye-catching. So we're going to have a bit of fun here now with some greens, and let's create a nice little scene for AJ, okay? It's for a gift for his wife. So yeah, I hope you like this, AJ. Thank you so much. And yes, let's crack on and have some fun with this. Learn a lot about mixing greens and painting trees. Okay, so don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. Okay, everyone, let's do this. There's the reference photograph. I know it looks quite busy, but I think we can make a beautiful painting out of this. If you look at the footpath, okay, there seems to be a lot of shadows going across the footpath, doesn't there? It looks very busy. So I'm going to dull that down a little bit. I'm not going to make it look so busy. I'll put a suggestion of a couple of little shadows here and there, but not so much as in the photograph. Because I find with the footpath, something like this, it can become too busy. Okay, so a nice simple footpath with a couple of shadows and this beautiful tree coming out. Isn't that gorgeous? It's a real eye-catching tree. So look, let's have a bit of fun with trees. I'll show you how to create some nice trees, and I'll try and simplify this for you. Okay. I know my channel is called Easy Oil Painting, but a lot of people do like a challenge from time to time. So let's dampen our large brushes. I'm going to tell you what colours I have on my palette. Titanium white, Naples yellow, cadmium yellow pale, magenta, lamp black, phaylo blue, burnt umber, burnt sienna, and cadmium red. I'm not sure about the cadmium red. I'm not sure if we need it, but I'll just pop a little bit on just in case, okay? And the burnt sienna as well. So let's go. I have a 16 by 12 canvas. What I done with this canvas now was, okay, it's a dry canvas. I didn't prime it. What I did was I took some linseed oil, okay, just regular artist quality linseed oil. I put some on a piece of tissue and I gave the canvas a quick rub with some linseed oil and it's dried in. That just gives you a nice kind of, a nice, almost a glossy surface to work on, but it's dry. It just helps the paint stay on the canvas and it helps your paint move around a little bit better, all right, rather than drying and soaking into the canvas very quickly. So a quick layer of linseed oil, leave it dry for 20 minutes or a half hour or so, and paint away, okay? Let's take some white. Let's get a nice bright blue sky up here. A little bit of white, some thinner, a little bit of thinners now, just a little bit, and phthalo blue. That'll give us a nice bright blue sky. Let's pop a nice bright blue sky up there. Okay, I'm not going to go too rich with the sky. And you can see now how the linseed oil, it just helps the paint flow around nicely on the canvas. You see that? It's a nice thin layer. If I didn't have any linseed oil, if this was just a regular, dry canvas that you would buy in any store, it would probably soak in and it would not go as far. So that touch of linseed oil, it does help. And it makes your paint go a lot further, believe me. You see, it's just a very quick, light coat. Let's pick up some white. Pop a little bit of white in there. I don't think we need to put clouds in this sky. It's just a hint of a blue sky here and there popping through the painting, okay? There's a bit down here showing, you can see that. Let's bring it up this way. And this is really a very thin layer. You can see how thin this is. The thinnest layer that you could think of. It really is so, so thin. You don't need to put loads and loads of paint on this, because if you put loads of thick paint all over this, when it comes to painting your trees, it's just going to blend in and become very muddy and very messy. And I find that's the problem a lot of beginners and amateurs have. They put on far too much paint to their sky. And of course, with painting oils, people tend to not have the patience to let the colours dry. So they want to paint and paint and paint, and it becomes very messy. So a very thin layer, really, that's all you need, okay? Let's take a bit more blue. I want to just pop a tiny bit more blue up here. Soften that through. There we go. I just want a little bit of a darker colour up there on the corner. And phaylo blue is perfect for any woodland scene because phaylo blue has a kind of a slightly greeny hue to it anyway. It's more on the greeny blue rather than French ultramarine or cobalt blue. They're kind of on the warmer, richer blue. This is a more subtle blue for landscapes, I find. But it's very, very, very strong. It has a lot of saturation, so just be careful. Only use the tiniest little amount, okay? Now, that's fine. Just pop a little. You could do the whole thing if you wanted, look, okay? But just pop a little bit in here and there, showing through the trees. That's it, done, we're finished. I'll put that brush down. Next, what I'm going to do is, now you would probably say, work from the top down, so put in all these trees up here. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put in this band of trees off here in the distance, behind the tree trunks. You see that? I'm going to put that in first. A nice soft green for that. So I go to a slightly smaller brush, give it a little damp, and let's take some phaylo blue, some white, and some cadmium yellow. That gives you a nice soft blue. Now what you want to do, what I want to do in this is create some distance, okay? I'm going to take a touch of magenta, a touch more blue. So what I'm doing is, in effect, I'm making a very soft green, a distant kind of a green, okay? You see that green? That's a very kind of a cool green, isn't it? A cool green will give you the impression of distance in your painting. So a nice cool green, not a very rich yellowy green, a very cool green, just a touch more of the blue. And that gives you a beautiful distant green, you see that? This is perfect now for painting distant trees and hills in a landscape. This kind of a colour. It just gives you that lovely depth. Okay, now as this comes forward, you see I'm just kind of softening this now up into the sky a little bit because you can't really see where it stops. It's kind of disappearing between all these trees at the front. So I'm just going to leave that sort of fizzle out, away off into the distance. Okay, that'll do fine. Now I'm going to start strengthening the green as it comes to this side. So as it comes closer to you, it's going to get much stronger. And for a stronger green, just take some black and yellow. Okay? Now that gives you a much richer, closer green, doesn't it? I'll take a touch of turpentine just to wet this up a little bit. I just want to help it flow just a little bit more, that's all. Pop this in and soften it across into your distant blue. You see that? Just soften it across. And I'm using a very rough brush. You see this brush, it's just a kind of a worn brush really. It's not a new brush. So a worn brush is vital. It's a very good idea just to grab any old worn brush, and that gives you this lovely, simple kind of a textured feel. Very random effect when painting. Now I'll bring that down. You can see it's kind of quite dry still. I'd say the linseed oil just kind of really soaked in a little bit, or I maybe missed a patch. So you can see the difference without the linseed oil. There we go. Bring that across the bottom. So it's slightly darker along the bottom, you see. There we go. And that's a nice distant green now, isn't it? You have to remember, I'm thinking ahead. So I know a lot of this is going to be covered with tree trunks and all that kind of stuff, okay? So I'm thinking ahead all the time. Now I'm going to do the same on this side. We have a big clump of green here. what you need to do when painting something like this, because if you look at the photograph, you see lots of detail, lots of little tree trunks and branches, and there's lights and darks and all of that. What you need to do is try to look past all that detail and focus on the background colors. So there's a lot of green here. I'm simply going to put in a big clump of green, basically, just for that background. Take some thinners. Let's get some cadmium yellow, little phaylo blue. You see how strong that is, very strong color, and perhaps a touch of Naples yellow, and again a little bit more blue, just to make it similar to the other side. Okay, now let me have a look. Okay, that's not bad. I might take a touch of magenta in that, just to warm it ever so slightly, and it's very wet. You see how wet this is? Very wet. I'm just filling in this whole area with that color. Very quickly, very loose. And let's just soften it upwards, and you can even go into your sky very gently as well. Look, just create a little canopy. It's just disappearing up into the sky very gently. Now that's my initial color. I'm now going to just take some blue and magenta, add a little bit of coolness to all of this. And again, you can see I'm using very wet colors. It's good to use slightly thinned out colors like this because it will dry quicker. It will set on the canvas much quicker, allowing you to put darker colors over this later on. And they won't mix together too much. So remember, thin colors to begin with, always thin colors. And I always tend, when doing this, to start off with slightly lighter colors and work in my darks. So let's work in a few darks into this. Let's take some black, cadmium yellow. Now I'm going slightly thicker with my paint. You see that? Touch of blue perhaps. So now I'm going much thicker, and I know this paint will stick to these much nicer. You see how nice and thick that is? It's like a very thick cream, a pasty color. Let's go in and just pop in some darks. And I'm using the corner of my brush, you see that? Just the corner, letting it just sort of dance around on the edges of my brush. I'm letting the brush now just dance around, depositing little tiny clumps of dark paint here and there. When it gets to here, I'm going to make it much richer, actually. I'm going to go for a much richer green. So I put in my kind of darker colors and then work some white, bright white highlights, whitey yellow highlights on top of all of this later on. Now I'll come over here. Let's just work in a couple of darks over here as well. And always think ahead. Think that a lot of this is going to be covered, okay? So don't try and get this too perfect, really. We're going to have tree trunks and all that kind of stuff coming in front of all of this later on. So really try not to get too much detail in painting individual leaves and all that kind of thing. You really don't need to put in all of that detail, okay? Because what I see on a lot of paintings, especially paintings like forests, when you have so much detail going on, it takes away from the point of interest in the painting, if you understand what I mean. So I keep all of this nice and simple, and then make this really detailed and really nice, and that will focus your eye in on the footpath and the walkway, which is what we should be doing, okay? And this big tree coming up as well. They're kind of the center points of interest for me. So I'm not going to put too much attention into the outside areas. Now I'm going to start putting in some nice brights. So we need to get some sunlight going. At the moment it looks just like a very bland green, doesn't it? Very flat. We need to get some sunlight into all of this. Let's clean our brushes. Go right into the yellow, cadmium yellow, and a little hint of white. Okay. And again, I'm going almost just paint on its own. And that's what will give us lovely thick texture, and it will stick properly. So let's try it. Go up here, pop some of that bright on around the tops, some of these, just creating this lovely whitey bright on some of the trees, okay? And what I generally tend to do is when I'm painting these, I start from the top and kind of allow that paint to disappear down into the dark underneath. You see what I mean? I'm just kind of tapering it down and allowing it to disappear, while creating some form at the same time and creating the curvature of the top of the trees. Do you understand what I mean? Now this is just one brush. You can use many different types of brushes for all of this, if you wish. Let's try that again. Get some Naples yellow in there. That's a nice bright colour. So we have a suggestion of the light catching the tops of the trees as they come down, okay? A little bit in there. And this is really just the first initial step of creating texture. I'll be adding to this as I go, all right? Let's try the other side. Naples yellow, cadmium yellow. We even take a hint of the bluey white as well. Add that in there. Let's go up here and create some brights on this. And it's really just about giving the impression that it's catching the light here and there, okay? It's an impression. I could sit here for 4 hours painting leaves, but I don't have the patience. I really don't. So I'm just going to give the impression of lots of little leaves and all that kind of stuff, foliage popping in and out. Now remember, your darks are very important, okay? These are not going to stand out unless you have some very, very rich, strong darks. I need to put in a few strong darks. Some phthalo blue, cadmium yellow, nice thick cadmium yellow there, look at that, and a little black. So some nice, rich, strong, dark greens here and there. And that will help the brights stand out just that little bit. Okay? You can even go darker than this actually. Go nice and dark down at the bottom here. You can see I'm just sort of working my way through it bit by bit, just adding colour all the time. You can see it's very random, but I'm creating the effect or the illusion of just a lot of detail, a lot of darks and lights and all that kind of thing. Now I am going to take some real dark colour, so I get some black, some yellow and some blue, and just create one or two little pieces like this, kind of flicking upwards. Again, reinforcing the impression of lots of things going on. There's a lot of stuff going on in the background. And it's very dark down here actually, isn't it? It's really dark down here. This was my first line. I'm going to ignore that. Okay, so I'll stop at that for now. We have kind of most of the background done on this. What I'm going to do is just add maybe some brighter whitey greens up on the top of some of these trees, okay? I'm going to take some blue, a little cadmium yellow, and a bit of white. So there's a lot of bright sort of whitey greens up there. I'm just going to brighten that slightly, add a few here and there, just to create a bit of light. Maybe a little bit off in the distance as well. very gently dabbing with my brush. You see that? Just very gently. And it's a very random effect, really. Bring this out just a little bit more. Bring some down into the painting. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'll leave the rest until later with my palette knife, okay? I'll pop some real bright stuff in with my palette knife later on. Next, let's go and do some tree trunks. I am going to take a small pointy brush for some real dark tree trunks, all right? And I'm thinking just black, because they're very black, aren't they? They're sort of in the shadow of the canopy. So they're going to be black, maybe with a few highlights thrown in as well. Let's just take a black with some turpentine, okay? Lots of turpentine. That will help it stick and become more solid. Let's go. Let's pick a point here and put in this nice little tree here. And it disappears off, up into the canopy. Clean the brush and go back in again. And we'll put another one in here. Again, going up and disappearing into the canopy. And it's just a case of doing this all the way. I'm going to try and copy this as best I can. Bring this down. And they're very sort of wiggly trees. They're not very straight. And then we'll add some nice branches to these as well. Okay, we have another one. As they come towards you, they're going to get slightly thicker. Let me take a bit of brown actually as well. They get thicker as they come towards you, and that just helps with the illusion of perspective. That helps you give the impression that it's going further and further away. So always make these closer ones nice and thick. Don't be shy. And we have a lot of branches on these as well. Put a nice thick one. I can use a thicker brush in a moment for some of the thicker ones as well anyway. But let's get some branches in here. Nice dark branches. An impression. Okay? Always remember, it's an impression. You can leave the background dry if you like. If that makes life a little easier for you. I'm going to get a smaller brush because this brush I'm using is just not quite small enough. Nice small pointy brush. And let's just give an impression of some branches coming off here and there. They're very rough kind of trees, aren't they? There's a lot of stuff coming off of them everywhere. You don't have to be too worried about these higher ones because we have a lot of foliage going on up here. So just a hint of one or two kind of popping out through the foliage. That's really all I'm kind of after. You see what I mean? Just one or two. A couple of nice ones coming off of this. But basically just have a bit of fun, okay? Don't be trying to sit here for 5 hours painting branches and twigs, because you'll become very frustrated and it just will not work, okay? You can if you like. I just don't have the patience to be sitting at my easel for 4 hours painting branches and leaves, but you might. But that's great if you can do that. But I just find myself getting impatient trying to sit for hours and hours painting little things like this. That's one of my many shortcomings, I will admit. Patience. I just like to get something, not finished, but I like to crack on and get stuff done. Okay, we're getting there, look. We're getting there. We only need a suggestion of a few branches coming in up on top of here. This is a lot of green up here. So let's just pop a little few branches coming in from outside the painting. It's a lot of green up here, so I'm not too worried about painting branches up there. I'm going to put a couple on the other side. Take some burnt umber, some thinners. Let's just thin that out. Put a couple in here. And these are slightly warmer because they seem to be catching the light a lot more, don't they? Suggestion of a couple going right into the painting up there. We have some lovely ones down at the bottom here where they kind of intertwine, don't they? Very, very nice. Bring a couple up here and a couple coming into the painting again. And there's a lot up here as well, look. What we're trying to achieve, really, what we're trying to do here is to make the painting look very busy. Okay, that's primarily, I would say, what we're trying to do. You're creating the impression of a very busy painting. Now I'm going to add some light to some of these. I know they look like they're in darkness completely over here. I'm just going to take some burnt sienna with Naples yellow, and I'm just going to pop with some thick paint now, lots of thick paint. I'm going to pop a suggestion of some light, catching some of these, look, just along the edges of some of them. You see that? It's just very, very light hint of a light catching some of those tree trunks over there. I'll do the same with this. Pop a little bit of a light. And then we could even go into a Naples yellow. Lots of thick Naples yellow just on its own, look. Because these ones appear to be catching a lot more light. I suppose the sun is coming down from the top right hand corner, so it's going to catch the right hand side a lot more. I'll just pop a little light in here and there. We have this lovely one on this side over here. It's a very dark tree coming up, and it just splits off and goes up like so. So a little burnt sienna first, and then we'll add some nice dark to this in a moment. Then I'm going to take some burnt umber and darken this. I'm using just thick paint now on its own. There's a little thinners in this, but a lot of it is just thick paint, okay? And that allows you to put thick paint on top of thin paint. Okay, so it's starting to take shape. I'll worry about my very bright details later on. I'm not too fussed about them just now. I may add one or two over here. But next I'm going to focus on some foliage, which is primarily what this painting is, a lot of foliage. We need to make these sit down slightly. So I'm going to take my medium brush again, and I'm going to just mix a dark green, okay? I'm just going to pop a little green in underneath those. You see, just to help them sit down, so they're not floating mid-air. Okay, so they're kind of settling down inside the bushes. Maybe a little bit here as well. Let's do this foliage up on top. Now, it looks very busy, doesn't it? I'm going to try and simplify it for you. Okay, I'll take my big brush. I'm just going to make sure this is nice and clean. There's no bright colours in this. Give it a good clean. And I get some thinners. So I'm going to take cadmium yellow. A little thinners just to help thin it slightly. And I'm going to get more cadmium yellow there on my palette because you can see we're going through a lot of yellow in this painting. Take more yellow and let's go for some phaylo blue. Let's have a look at this. Okay, I'll go with that. I'm just going to create a rough idea of the canopy shape with this colour first, okay? Just a very, very rough idea. A rough general idea. Let's get plenty of paint in here now. Look, let's not be shy. And just a case of filling all this in, but I'm leaving some of the blue show through as well, okay? And I'm being very loose with all of this for a reason, because I'm going to then use my palette knife to create some lovely texture, little leaves and all that kind of stuff, all right? So don't worry, we're going to be doing a lot with a palette knife in this painting. And I actually only today just got a question about the palette knife. A good follower of mine was asking me about painting with a small palette knife, saying they find it slightly difficult. Could I show them about using the small palette knife? And yes, I'll show you about using the small palette knife in just a moment. So I'm just focusing on filling this in first, okay? I'll put a little bit up on this side as well. I'm just sort of putting in, again, the background kind of green. A lot of dark in there. And it's very important to have plenty of dark in foliage like this. I'm going to use my palette knife, but you'll get what I mean. This colour is still a bit bright for me. But I just want to create the effect of lots of random foliage covering almost the entire painting. I'm leaving this part in the section, just in the middle. There's a little bit actually there as well. Just pop that in, just put it in, there's no harm. Then I'm going to go very dark. Okay, now you could use a fan brush as well if you liked. I think I'll just go very dark with this brush. Let me just try it. Some black, some blue, and a touch of yellow, just to make it a very blacky green, okay? Let's go nice and dark in under the canopy here. Could take a bit of brown as well if you like. Basically, lots of thick paint, lots of dark colour, and just using the corner of the brush. And I'm building it up darker, darker, darker each time. Okay, need a bit of darkness over here. Right, I'm going to stop at that, and I'm going to start using a palette knife. So I have the general foliage done. The next thing I want to do is my palette knife, okay? This is where it's going to get fun. But before I do, I need to take a very small pointy brush and just pop some more branches in up on top here, okay? Just a few more before I put on my palette knife over all of this. Just create a couple of branches popping out here and there off of these trees. It's just really an impression. I'll pop a few up here as well. I will add lots more detail into this very soon, but I'm just kind of really now, I'm just focusing on putting in a very loose impression of all this. You see these very bright branches we have up here? They look very, almost like a whitey yellow colour. I'm going to put a couple of flicks in there to just suggest some of those as well. It seems to be like something that's kind of almost draping down over the scene, isn't it? They're very, I presume they're probably dead branches or something like that, but they look like they're sort of draped down over the painting. So I'm just going to pop a few in, a bit of light colour. And again, these will show lovely in a moment. Pop a couple of flicks up here. Let's just create that impression. Okay, palette knife. Our little friend, the palette knife. I'm going to need lots of thick paint for this. So let's have some fun with our palette knives, everyone. Let's grab some yellow. I may need a lot more, but that will do for now. I'm going to take some phthalo blue. And I think that's all I need. Okay, let's go for it. Cadmium yellow, little phthalo blue. Mix those together. You don't have to mix these perfectly. You can see it's sort of a marbly effect, isn't it? Let's just take that. Load up your palette knife and let's just go to town. Look, flicking it outwards, inwards, all different directions. And it's just really to create a little texture, lots of thick texture on your painting. You see that? Don't be shy. Don't feel like you're going to ruin or spoil your painting. You won't, I promise. Just have yourself a bit of fun. Come on, let's do it. Let's get a bit darker. Let's go slightly darker with this. A little bit of black. Go for a nice dark green. Flicking it inwards, flicking it upwards, just in all directions, okay? And I'm focusing on just the darker, slightly darker shades first. Get a little bit of blue in there. I'll put a little bit over here as well. You see I'm kind of scraping it outwards, flicking it outwards, just very, very randomly, okay? Just keep telling yourself it's texture, it's all texture, creating texture. Yeah, we're getting there slowly. And this takes time. So I'm going to take my time with this. You can grab yourself, oh, I forgot, you just reminded me. I brought a nice little coffee with me. Take a sup of coffee before it goes cold. Although I'll drink it even if it's cold, I don't mind. Now, let's go up here and create some nice dark colour in this canopy there. Use your palette knife, look, just to scrape it along. Don't be shy. And these are all the darker shades I'm putting on. When we go to put the brights on, then you're going to see it really come to life. I promise. That's when you'll see it really start jumping off of the canvas, when we start putting on the brighter colours. Okay, so I'm happy enough with that for now. That is okay. Let's go and start putting on some very bright colours. I'm going to put on a lot of cadmium yellow because I'm going to need it. And let's take some of that. And you can even mix it into the colour we have already. Let's take a touch of blue. And then maybe a touch of Naples yellow. So we have a nice bright green here now. Let's start popping some of this in. Look. Now, see? Just imagine you've lots of big, thick, clumpy leaves in the foreground. Very close to us up here. And you can see I'm just kind of dancing around now on the canvas, popping in lots of lovely bright colour. Naples yellow and cadmium yellow. And this brighter colour is bringing the foliage forward to us. Let's get some nice brighter colour here. Cadmium yellow with some white. And let's add a little bit of foliage to this side. I find adding it to both sides just to balance out the painting, it does help. I really do think it helps. If I keep all my foliage just to one side, it's just going to look uneven. The composition won't look right. So what I tend to do is always add a little bit of the same colour to the other side of my scene as well. I think it does balance out the painting just a little bit better. So if I'm putting a lot of bright over here like this, I just add a little bit to this side as well. See what I mean? It carries the colours across your canvas. Even though they may not be there, but it's a good idea, I find, just to help balance out your painting. Now that's starting to look a bit better already, isn't it? You see what I mean? Just building up your colours. Now AJ, if you're watching, this is going to take a couple of days to dry enough that I can frame it and ship it, because all this thick paint will take very long. Let me just take some sienna. All this thick paint will take very long to dry. So I hope you don't mind waiting a few days, AJ. I'm sure you won't, but look, I'll give it a couple of days and then I will pop it in the frame and it'll be off to you, okay? Along with the others. Now what I was going to do as well was just add a little bit of colour and a bit of light to the bottoms down here. You see, just kind of scraping our knife, just dabbing it here and there, giving it a little scrape, just to create the illusion of light popping through this area down here. Okay, that makes sense. Bringing it down, and even here as well. grab a little light and let's pretend there's a lot of foliage and all that kind of stuff sticking up and catching the light here and there. Now you can see how easy that was just with the palette knife, just putting lots of paint on. Really just try and keep it simple. If you focus too much on the detail of it, it's just going to be very difficult for you. Now get a small brush and let's start this little footpath down here. I'm going to start with a very light colour, some magenta, white and Naples yellow. And I'm going to go for a very sunlit colour off in the distance. Just scrape it left and right like this. Okay. Then we have a lovely purple, don't we? Grab some blue and some magenta. I'll go more on the magenta side, I think, for this. Pop a little of that across and soften it back. Then I'll make it a bit more on the blue, just at the bottom here, just to create that little shadow. We have a beautiful little shadow off there in the distance, isn't there? It's very nice, really. Soften it along both sides. And you can see the way I'm pulling some greens into this. That just gives it a lot more of a natural kind of a feel. Okay, rather than having just solid lines going along, I always tend to soften the colour into the bushes and trees and that kind of thing, just a little bit. Now I'll take another clean flat brush for this. I'm going to put in first a nice bright colour. I'll go with white, Naples yellow and a little magenta. Let me have a look at this. So a very bright sunlit colour. The perfect mix for me is magenta, white and Naples yellow. I find those three colours together give the most gorgeous sunlit colour. You see that? They really do. It creates a beautiful colour. A little bit of white, a little bit of Naples yellow. Go along here. Now, I'm avoiding the blue there for a very good reason. If I go into that blue with the yellow, I'll get green. So, let's take a little bit of pink. Nice mauve colour. And soften it through. That way, it's not going to mix and go green, is it? You see? Make it nice and soft. Again, I'm pulling some greens in here, look, just to help sort of merge the bank into the footpath, just a little. Okay, let me just sit back now and take a quick look at this. Right, we're going well. We are going well. I'm now going to start adding some darker, slightly darker colours to the footpath. I'm taking some burnt umber, some black and a touch of magenta. Okay, and I'm simply just going to start putting this in as slightly darker shades. You see that kind of dark shadowy colour in under there? Popping out. It's catching a lot of shadow up here, isn't it? So I'm just going to dab that along. You can use a small brush for this now if you like as well. The trick with this colour is magenta, all right? I'm going to just kind of bring some of these shadows and dab them into the greens, just so it all sort of merges together. So what I don't want is a very sharp line between the two. I want them sort of merging together ever so slightly. Okay, and I'm just sort of dabbing my brush around here and there. I did say I wasn't going to overdo this section, okay? And I'm not going to. I'm just going to just create a little, very rough sort of shadows on the ground over here, being caught by the trees overhead. But just, I'm not going crazy, look, okay? Okay, we can maybe bring one or two over on this side as well. Using the corner of the brush, just sort of creating little squiggly lines here and there. Once I've that done, I'm going to take a soft brush, okay? I have a very soft fan brush here. I'm going to use this for blending, and I'm going to simply soften all of this together, pulling the shadows outwards, even into the greens, look, and pulling it out. So that's just softening the brush stroke away slightly. Do you understand? You see what I mean? Just a little soft. Soften it away ever so slightly. So now we'll sit back and take a look at this. And we can start building it up if we want. So I'm going to take my small round brush and I'm going to get some nice dark colour, some black and some magenta. I'm going to go for a dark pink, okay? Very dark blacky pink. First of all, I'm going to do this shadow of this tree coming down, like so. Look, you can even take a bit of blue actually as well, a little bit of mauve. And it gets slightly thicker as it comes along and disappears into that darkness, doesn't it? And up here, I'm going to sort of allow it to disappear as well. Now with this colour, I'm going to just create a few little shadows being cast on the floor here and there. I add a bit of blue to this actually, just to make a nice, rich, shadowy colour. And what I'm doing really, do you know what? I'm not even looking at the photograph. What I'm doing is just going at my own and just making my own impression of nice shadows coming out from the darkness. Just create little impressions of shadows on the road, on the footpath, you know, on the walkway. So it doesn't have to be as smooth as it is in the photograph, okay? Or as sharp, if you understand what I mean. It doesn't have to be as sharp as it is in the photographs. You can make them soft. I think they're probably nicer if they're slightly softer, I think, to give a nice kind of a feeling to an oil painting, softer colours. I just find if you're putting in very sharp, strong colours and sharp lines on a painting, especially for shadows and stuff like that, just looks a bit too harsh for me. I prefer to soften the colours out ever so slightly. I'm just going to soften that tree trunk now away off, and I'm going to add some dark over here. Okay, just like that, into the tree trunk. So it's all merging into the darkness. So now we're starting to get there, aren't we? One thing I am going to do is take a fan brush. I'm going to take a fan brush. I'm going to mix some dark colour, some black, some blue, and a touch of yellow. Maybe even a touch of burnt umber. And I'm going to come over here and just add a little darkness coming down onto the footpath. Okay, that's another way of creating some nice shadowed effects. So you can see what I mean, just sort of dabbing it along and allowing it to go out into the footpath just a bit. It just creates that rough area and it helps bring the footpath into the green just a little bit. Now it's a kind of a rough footpath, so let's just add a touch of this along here and there. It gives it a little bit of detail, I find, doesn't it? We can take a touch of sienna as well. It just adds a bit of texture to the footpath, you see what I mean? I won't overdo this now, it's just a little bit I want to do. Especially up here, there's a nice shadow going on up there. And then I'll just very gently again, kind of soften this back into my footpath, just slightly, look. And it's really just to give it some texture. So we know we're on a footpath, there's a lot of kind of dirty gravel and all that kind of thing coming along here and there. And soften that back up there. Now isn't that lovely? It's a lovely impression, isn't it? Next, I'm going to do this big tree trunk coming up here. I'd like to get that in just to show you what it's going to be like. I'm thinking just some Naples yellow, perhaps. Just for now, some Naples yellow. And going by the shadow, it doesn't really matter about the shadow, really. It's coming down like this and up, isn't it? So let's go like this. And then it comes up and gets thin. It goes right up into the canopy, doesn't it? Now you can see it's wet and it's mixing with everything else, so it might take a few tries. But you could just very well let that dry if you want. It's up to yourself completely. Personally, I quite like the way oil paints pick each other up slightly. It really adds to the painting, I find. Now what I'm going to do is take my palette knife. I'm going to take a flat palette knife this time. I'm going to go with this flat one. And I'm going to use that with some white Naples yellow, even a hint of cadmium, if I can get a clean piece. This will then give me that shape that I want, a nice solid shape. Okay, let's go up here and just drag this across. Now it doesn't matter if I made a little bit of a boo-boo there, a little bit of a mess, it doesn't matter, it's fine. It's just putting on lots of thick paint for me, you see. I'll go up here and bring that straight up. Let's go to the other side. Okay. So at least we have that done. Now we can then sort of finish it with the pointy brush. If I can find it, there it is. So I can then just go along here with the pointy brush and just straighten it slightly. You see what I mean? Now if you notice, as it goes up, it does get darker, doesn't it? So let's take some sienna with a little bit of burnt umber. Or even black, look. It's a bit of sienna with some black. A nice warm, warm colour. Maybe a touch of cadmium red. With that thick paint, could just go up and soften it downwards slightly. Go right up into the canopy now with this. And I'm going to soften that downwards on the tree, okay? Like so. I'm going to then add some of that under here. I'll take some cadmium red and some sienna. Add a little bit of that down here, okay? You can see there's a bit of a warm colour coming through over here, isn't there? I'm going to just add that little touch of warm colour just in underneath. And perhaps a little touch of that shadowy colour here and there on the tree trunk. Now, what I'm going to do is just take some dark colour, some black, some brown, and just maybe add a little shadow at the bottom of this. And I'll just soften some of these in, that's all. I think for the last step on this, I'm going to take some white. I'm going to pop some white just here, just to really show it's really popping from the bright of the sun, okay? And then all we have to do is again cover some of that canopy. So just go up here and let's just let this disappear into that canopy up there. Disappearing away up into that lovely canopy up overhead. And then I think we're almost done. I may just kind of tip away with this now just a little bit here and there, but in general I'm quite pleased with how this has turned out. I'm just going to take some light colour, just pop a little bit of light colour here and there. And I think that's a nice impression of the scene, don't you? I think that turned out really nice. Now there's one piece I want to do, and that's just with some Naples yellow and some white. I want to create these little uprights. Nice impression of those. You see that kind of very sort of, I suppose, is it old dead wood or something? Just sort of flicking upwards there in the background. Maybe a little bit, popping out like this. And I'm happy with that. Very happy. Should I put the impression of two people walking in this? I think this would make it really nice, don't you? And really personal for them. I think I will. I might put an impression of two people walking off in the distance. One slightly dark red, perhaps. So come on, let's do it. And they'll be far away, so only small. If you can paint the shape of a carrot, you can paint a person walking, okay? I keep saying it. It's the shape of a carrot, look. Now, the scale, we can make it bigger or smaller, whatever, it's up to yourself. I'm just thinking about the scale. I think that's probably okay. And perhaps let's get some Naples yellow for a bit of contrast. And then a touch of black, perhaps. And what I will do then is with the Naples yellow, I'm just going to put like an arm going around like that, you see? Two people going for a nice walk down the lane, and then I put two little dots just for the heads, okay? See, little dot there and a little dot there. I think that's perfectly fine. Then we just need a small indication of a shadow. Put the shadow this way, okay? Going off. And my friends, we are done. I will just tidy up a few little bits here and there when I finish. But look, in general, I'm quite pleased. I'll just tidy up a couple of bits and pieces around the place. But I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, AJ. Do let me know what you think. I certainly think this has turned out very, very nice. Considering when you look at the photograph, it looks like a lot of detail, but you can see in reality, just get a palette knife and just go around and add lots of thick foliage here and there. That really gives you the illusion of lots of detail, okay? So, I'm done. I'll let it for a while and I may come back to it. So thank you so much, everyone. Let me turn the camera. I hope you've enjoyed that, AJ. I really, really do. Thank you so much for your support and purchasing my paintings. I hope you find a nice spot on your wall at home for these paintings. But thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial. I'll be back again next week with another tutorial on YouTube. God bless you all, my friends. Happy painting, okay? Try and keep it simple, just have some fun. All right? I'll see you again. Take care.